Everyone. This is Dr. Ujjwala Lande, Assistant Professor, Department of Zoology, Sri Shivaji College of Arts, Commerce and Science, Akola. The topic for today's discussion is structure of mammalian skin. Now students, you know that skin is the outermost covering of mammalian body and it is the largest organ in the body. It is about 1.5 to 2.0 square meters in an average adult. In humans, the whole surface of the body is covered by the skin, which has sparse growth of hair. The skin is around 1 to 2 millimeter in thickness. So despite of being just a few millimeters thickness, skin makes up around 1/7 of our body weight. The skin of the palm of hand and soles of the feet are around 6 mm thickness. It is the first line of defense of body against external factors. Means suppose it is just the protective covering. If any external thing is going to enter into the body, the skin acts as the first barrier. So it first protects or prevents entry of any germs into the body. Now, see the parts of skin. The mammalian skin comprises of 3 layers. The outermost layer is called as the epidermis, whereas the intermediate layer is the dermis and the innermost layer is called as the subcutaneous or which is made up of adipose tissues. This is also called as hypodermis. This layer is also called as hypodermis. Hypo means below and this is the dermal layer. So just very interior or at the depth, so it is called as hypodermis. The skin being an external covering of the body surface, it requires constant care to ward off microorganisms that can penetrate to cause the infection. Now in this slide, you can see the internal structure or anatomy of the skin is shown over here. So here is you can see the outermost layer, that is from this area to here. It is the epidermis, and below that a very large area is of the dermal layer, and below that is the hypodermis and the cuticle layer, subcuticle layer. So the skin has 3 basic layers, that is the epidermis, the dermis and the hypodermis. The topmost layer is called as the epidermis, and the main role of the epidermis is to make sweat. The main role of the epidermis is the outermost layer of our skin is called epidermis, and the main role of epidermis is to make new skin cells, to give color to the skin as well as to protect the body. Now in the middle one you can see that is the intermediate layer. This one you can see. This layer is called as the dermis layer or the derma layer, and this layer makes sweat and oil. You can see in this middle layer here is the hair structure that you can see, hair bulb. This one is the sweat gland, and then you can also see the oil gland, that is the sebaceous glands, which are present here in this structure. You can see the sebaceous gland very clearly. So the main role of dermal layer is to make sweat and oil, provide sensation and blood to the skin, as well as hair grows in this region. The third layer is, or the innermost layer, you can see hypodermis, that is made up of subcutaneous layer of fat, and its main attachment or its main function is to control the body temperature as well as it stores the fats. So about these three layers, students, we are going to study in detail. So we are going to first understand the first layer, that is the epidermis, as we have already said that it is the outermost layer. So you may call it as the cuticle or scarf of the skin, and this layer is very thin. In the previous slide you can see that as compared to the dermis, this layer is very thin. So this is very thin layer. Though it is thin, it is very tough layer, and it is made up of keratinocyte cells. So these keratinocyte cells, they secrete a protein that is called as keratin, and these cells, the keratin cells or the keratinocytes, they originate from the basal layer of the epidermis and migrate towards outward. That means here in this picture you can see this small area is of the epidermis. So in the lower layer or at the basal layer they are produced, and from the basal layer, that is from the interior, they are migrating towards the exterior. That is from here they are migrating towards the exterior. They are produced in the lower layer and migrating towards the exterior layer, that is the outer layer, and then the older ones are replaced by the new one, that is called as shedding of skin. So friends, you must have observed in winter season white dusty particle that is seen on your surface of your body, that is on your skin. So that is nothing but the removal or dead epidermal cell which are worn out, and that is replaced by a new layer of cell. So thus epidermis is very protective in function. It protects our body from mechanical injury. It prevents bacterial entry as well as it reduces water loss. So that is the outermost layer of epidermis, what actually it is doing. So this is the outermost layer. It is preventing mechanical injury, prevent bacterial entry, and reduces water loss. This purple color that you can see, this one is the middle layer. Now this middle layer is made up of living cell. The external layer that was made up of dead cells, but the middle layer of epidermis is made up of living cells, and as we approach towards the surface, these cells, when approach toward the surface, they become dead. And the innermost layer, you can see this is the innermost layer. This is black in color. Why? Because there is secretion of a pigment called as melanin pigment, and this melanin pigment absorbs ultraviolet ray and protects us from the UV rays. Thus, the cell had division to repair the lost outer layers. So these are the things which are taking place in this small or very thin layer that is called as the epidermis. Now more about epidermis, we will understand that the epidermis is made up of, though it is a very thin layer, it is made up of 4 plus 2, that is 6 layer it is made up of. The stratum corneum, the first layer is the stratum corneum that you can see. This one is the first layer, stratum corneum. It is horny layer, and you can see the cells. In between the cells, the cells are very tightly packed, because that is the reason they appear like scale, and they are continuously, they are shed off and they are replaced by the layer which is present beneath. That means, because suppose this is the cell, one cell, this is the second cell, and this is the third cell, then you can see in between the cells there is no gap. That means they are very tightly packed cell, and that is the reason we say these cells are very waterproof at will, as well as they prevent entry of any foreign substance directly into the body. The second layer, that is called as stratum lucidum. This is a very clear layer that you can see here, and it is a very made up of very small transparent cells through which light can pass, and these are present only on hands and feet and not present where there are hair follicles. I'll show you the previous diagram. You can see this is the region where there is hair follicle present. So where there is hair follicle present, in that area this stratum lucidum is not present. You must have observed on your feet as well as on your palm there are no hair present. That is the reason stratum lucidum is present, a clear layer that is present here in the on the palms as well as on the soles of your feet. So this is the horny zone. The third layer that is called as the stratum granulosum, that is granular layer. The cells which are present here are granular, and these cells are dying as well as these. This is again called as the horny zone. Means we have seen that the first layer is a horny zone, the second layer is a horny zone, the third layer is also a horny zone. So three layers we have seen. All these three layers are made up of horny zones. The next layer is stratum spinosum. This is the basal layer, prickle cell layer. As cell undergoes mitosis below, they are pushed upward into this layer and begins the basal layer. So this fourth row here from here to here that you can see here, that is the layer which is called as the basal layer. And below this layer, the new cells are produced. Here the cells are dividing and new cells are produced. As new cells are produced, these cells are pushed towards the upward direction, and the cells they come to the stratum spinosum, that is the fourth layer. Now come to the fifth layer. The fifth layer is called as stratum mucosum. So this is also called as stratum germinatum, but stratum germinativum refers to the lowest rows of cell to make up the basal layer, that is the basal zone, which is a living cell that you can see this layer. So, and the last layer or the innermost layer of epidermis, that is called as basal layer, which is composed of a single layer of cell. You can see this is just a one layer of cell that you can see. This is the place where mitosis occurs and the cells begin their journey towards the surface or towards the upward movement. So here the cells are produced and the new layer of cell it move towards the outer sides, and approximately 28 days are required for the cells to be produced and pigment granules produced. Here they are called as melanocytes, and that imparts color to the skin, as you all know about it. Now, the second layer that we will see, the second layer is the dermis. The epidermis is a very narrow, very thin layer, whereas dermis is a very thick layer that you can see here. Here, the dermal layer is divided further into two layers. The first region is called as the papillary layer or the papillary region, and the second region is called as the reticular region, that is the deeper layer. So superficial region is the papillary region, and this is made up of loose connective tissue. It has finger-like projections that push into the epidermis. So here you can see These are the connective tissues or the papillary region. Here you can see the finger-like projections, and these finger-like projections are pushed into the epidermis, and these projections give the dermis a bumpy surface and are responsible for the patterns we have on our fingertips. So you all must have seen that fingerprints, what we called. So fingerprints, what we call, that is due to this papillary layer that gives the epidermis a cone-shaped projection, that is the elastic tissue. So that is all the about the patterning that is given due to this papillary layer. Below this is a layer present that is called as reticular layer or the deeper layer. So this is made up of dense, irregularly organized tissue. Here earlier there was a loose tissue, connective tissue, and below this there is irregularly organized connective tissue. Now the protein fibers in the reticular region, it gives skin the strength and elasticity. So this is the region where the skin gets the elasticity. Now the region is made up of a protein called as collagen as well as elastin protein fibers, and this is responsible for imparting strength and flexibility. In this region, you can also see that there are the blood capillaries. You can see this is the blood capillary here. So this is the blood capillary that is present in this region, as well as this. Below this here you can see that this is the hair follicle you can see, and this is the shaft of the hair that you can see. This is the region where you can see the sweat glands which are present here, as well as you can see that there are the nerve fibers and the erector muscle. When there is extreme cold condition or fear, then you can see the hairs on the skin, they become very erect. That is only due to the erector muscles. Let us see the next part. In detail we see about the dermis, as we have seen, that is the blood capillaries which are present here. Now what is the role of blood capillaries? The role of blood capillaries is to nourish the cell of the skin. So whichever cells which are dividing in this region, or whichever cells are present in this dermis, to provide nourishment to this dividing cells, that is the role of the capillaries. And these capillaries, they branch out into superficial blood capillaries. The capillaries which are present here to the superficial region, these are branched out from these blood capillaries. The next you can see, that is the sweat gland. The sweat gland is surrounded by a network of capillaries. They secrete sweat, and this is the characteristic of mammals. That is, sweat glands are present only in mammals. Here you can see the coiled sweat gland is present, and the sweat gland has got a duct, and here is the pore. So whatever sweat is produced here, it is brought to the surface, and this is evaporated here, thus making the surface very cool. The next one is the hair follicle and the hair. So each hair has a nerve and capillary attached to it. That is the reason these are the nerve fibers which are attached to the hair follicle, and this is the blood vessel. This is the reason when someone pulls your hairs, you feel pain. That is due to the nerve fibers. So these nerve fibers, they receive stimuli. Then the capillaries are providing nourishment, that is food and oxygen, and hair reduces heat loss and assists in temperature and regulation. Now the erector muscle that you can see, this erector muscle is attached to the hair. So it controls the hair movement for temperature regulation. Then you can see the oil gland in this area, that is called as the sebaceous gland. Now what the sebaceous gland is doing? It is secreting oily substances. It makes the skin waterproof. So whatever oil is secreted, it comes out through this pore and it spreads over the epidermis. That is the reason our skin is waterproof. This oil also prevents entry of bacteria into the body. The next one is the receptor. So receptor is, so you can see here, these are the receptors. Number of receptors are here, 1, 2, 3, many you can see. These are the receptors for pain, for pressure, for temperature, for touch. So all these receptors are present over here in the dermal layer, and that is the reason you are able to sense pain as well as pressure, temperature and touch. So this is a role of epidermis. So this is a picture, one more slide that I have shown here. So to see the detailed structure, you can see the vein which is shown here in the blue color, the artery which is shown here in the red color, then below you can see the yellow color, that is the fatty tissue, and then you can also see the pale color, the nerves which makes it sensitive. This is the oil gland, you can see. The hair shaft which is present above the skin, it is a dead thing, because that is the reason when you cut your hairs you don't feel or experience any pain. But here when your hairs are pulled, you can see this is the follicular region. This region is not dead, it is living, and therefore in this follicular region you can experience pain. And this is the sweat gland. Sweat gland is releasing sweat, and this through the sweat duct, it comes through the sweat pore to the surface and it is evaporated. So here in this I have shown the structure and function of skin component. So each layer I have given all the functions and the structure of this, and this is for your self-study and to prepare this table that I have given to you.